This is an online tutorial for Project 9 found in Learning Module 10. So from the homepage, click that link. When you get to Learning Module 10, click on the Project 9 link. That'll take you to this page. You can download everything you'll need for Project 9 by clicking this link. There'll be a zip archive in your downloads folder. When you unzip it, you'll see the top two items are the step-by-step instructions, then the video files in two different formats, .mov and .mp4. I included both because some students had an issue with one or the other. You can use whichever video works best for you. They're both about the same quality. By the way, MOS is an English-German hybrid acronym that literally means mid-out sound. In fact, neither of these two videos have any sound. All of the audio elements you'll need are in the Project 9 Elements 48-24 folder. When you open that up, you can scroll through and see all the sounds that you have. They're not as many as in Project 8, but you'll find everything you'll need for this project. Notice in some cases there are duplicates of the same sound. I'm not sure why that is, but don't worry about it. Redundancy is never a bad thing, so just use whichever one you want and it should work. So now that you have all the elements downloaded and you know where everything is, launch Audition either from the dock or the applications folder. By the way, if you want to use another app like Logic or Pro Tools or GarageBand, that's perfectly fine. Any app that supports video will work, but an app like Audacity that doesn't support video won't work. So after Audition launches, go to File, New, Multitrack Session, or click on the Multitrack icon button to create this session. This window will open up. Name your session, first name, last name, P9 or Project 9. Put it on the desktop so you can easily find it later. We're going to do it at 48K because it's a video project and all the audio elements are 48K, 32-bit, stereo, and there it is. Notice that the video display in the lower center of the screen is in timecode. This is the best time format to be in for a video project. If you're not in timecode, from a Mac, go to the Adobe Audition menu, then to the Preferences and then Time Display, and select SMPTE 2997 frame per second. If you're on a PC, the Preferences folder is in the Edit menu. Another helpful feature in recent versions of Adobe Audition is the video timecode overlay found in the Video Preferences section. You can see there at the bottom, you enable it. You can control the size, the location, the opacity, where you want to put it. I generally put it in the lower third and use Session as the time reference. Be aware that when you export this file, this window will not appear in the final video, which is a good thing. You want to see it while you're working, but not in the final output. Okay, so I imported the movie from the Downloads folder. I actually chose the .mov. You can try the .mp4. Either one should work. They're both the same quality and they look the same. But notice, unlike a typical QuickTime movie, you don't see a nested audio track. There's just the video icon there, so it's video only. So drag the movie out onto the timeline. It'll make its own video reference track there up at the top. And it's probably a great idea to right-click or control-click and select Lock in Time. That'll put a little lock icon on the video and you can't accidentally move it out of sync by grabbing it. You usually see the video window somewhere docked in the lower left-hand side, but if you're not seeing it, go to the Windows menu and scroll down to Video and make sure that's checked. I usually undock the video so I can move it around on the screen, I can size it, I can grab any of those four corners and stretch it or squeeze it, and notice the burn-in timecode window in the lower third of the picture. Press Command-I or go to the Files menu and select Files Import. Locate the audio files in your Downloads folder, click on the top file, shift-click on the bottom file, select Input, and there they are in the Files panel ready to be used. If you click on the speaker icon, it'll turn blue, and then you can audition any of the files in the Files panel by simply clicking on them. Okay, the first sound file that we're going to insert is the 2-beep, which is very close to the top of the Files panel, and we're going to drag it in and locate it 1 second in. Notice that this commercial doesn't actually start at the beginning of the timeline. There's 3 seconds of Academy Leader at the beginning. There's also 1 second of silence at the end of the commercial, making the total length 34 seconds. Television stations and film producers always used to request a 2-beep on the audio tracks, and some still do. But in many cases now, they say, hey, just start it right at the first frame of the video, and we don't care about the 2-beep. But I just wanted to show you that in case you ever have to use a 2-beep. Here's a close-up look in the waveform editor. It's simply a 1K tone, 1 frame long, placed 2 seconds before the picture starts. All right, this project was an actual commercial that was used for Knights Action Park, which is a small amusement park located in south central Illinois. They've got some small water attractions and also go-kart tracks, batting cages, golf driving ranges, arcades. It's kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese on steroids. Okay, so I'm going to start by going to the browser in the Files panel and typing in Wavepool to locate the Wavepool sound, which I'm going to use under all the water scenes. It's a nice sound with people laughing and having fun. You hear the sound of water. Okay, I'm going to locate the first water scene, which is right at the beginning of the commercial at 3 seconds in. And I'm going to drag the Wavepool onto track 2, the 2 beeps on track 1. Then I'm going to adjust the zoom by hitting the plus and minus keys so that when I hit the arrow keys, the greater than less than keys, it moves the picture exactly a frame. This is similar to Premiere in that the zoom width affects the nudge. The reason that we want a frame is that we know the picture doesn't change any faster than a frame. So then I'll press the right arrow key to nudge this a frame at a time until I don't see water. Then I'm going to press Command K to split the file. Next, I'll move a frame at a time to the right until I do see water again on this scene. Then I'll slide the wave pool sound to the right and snap it to the location right on that line. It's helpful if the magnetic snapping tool at the top of the screen there is blue. That'll help it snap right to the line. Then I'll nudge it to the right until I don't see water in the scene and again hit Command K. After splitting the file, I'll nudge again to the right until I see water and then I'll stop. I'll slide the wave pool sound to the right and snap it to the red now line and then nudge through until I don't see water again on that scene. I'll hit Command K. Then I'll nudge again to the next scene with water. I'll slide the water down to the now line. Then I'll nudge again to the next scene where I don't see water. I'll cut it, Command K. Then I'll nudge until I do see water again. I'll slide the wave pool to the now line and nudge a frame at a time to the right until I don't see water. Cut the wave pool sound and then nudge to the next water scene. At this point, we're about to the end of the wave pool file, so I'll cut it when we go to the mini golf scene. I can drag the wave pool sound from the Files panel and paste it at the beginning of the next water scene. I'll continue nudging a frame at a time to the right until this shot, then I'll cut it. And again, I'll drag the wave pool sound to the next scene where the water appears. We'll repeat this process for the rest of the commercial, cutting on the non-water scenes, dragging the wave pool to where the water begins again. This is the last water scene, so at the end of this shot, we'll cut off the wave pool when the go-kart starts. If I played the track now, it would sound a little jarring with the abrupt cuts in and out from the wave pool, but it'll sound fine when we get everything in. I'm going to take a moment now and label the tracks that we have so far, the 2-beep and the wave pool. This will be helpful when we go to the mixer window. We can see what we have. Also, track 3 I'm going to label as sprays. I'm going to add a water spray sound effect when we see the guy and the girl come down on these water slides. And rather than chopping the spray off at the end of the scene, it'll sound too abrupt. I'm going to let it extend into the next scene and then do a fade at the end of it. Okay, that was the guy on the water slide. Later in the video, there's a woman on the water slide. It's always kind of best to work right to left so you don't paste over anything. I'm going to hit Command C to copy that, and then I'm going to go down to where the woman comes in on her water slide, find that location, and hit Command V to paste that water slide sound in. I'd also like to add some splashes in a couple places, so I'm going to take track 4 and label that as splashes. And then in the browser in the Files panel, I'm going to type in splash, and I've got a couple of choices. They're both the same, but I'm going to take one of them, and I'm going to paste it in. This happens really at the tail end of the scene. You almost don't see much of it, and we're going to let most of the splash go into the next scene. But again, like with the spray, we're going to fade out the tail of it so it doesn't linger too long. Okay, I'm going to hit Command C to copy that sound. I'm going to go down to where the toddler goes in the water, and I'm going to paste it there. The splash may sound too big for the toddler, but we're going to adjust the volume with the yellow bar, and suddenly it sounds right. Okay, now I'm going to label track 5 as speed slide, and then I'm going to go into the Files panel in the browser and type in the word speed and find the speed slide sound that I want to use. Now, this is one of the files that you don't orient toward the left side or the leading edge of the file. Instead, we're going to find the spot in the file where the sound is the loudest. That's usually where it's the closest to the camera and also in the center of the frame. We call that the Doppler point. If you listen to the speed slide sound, you can actually hear the pitch change as we cross the Doppler point. Still, the easiest way to find the Doppler point is to locate the spot where the sound is the loudest, and that's generally a good indication that's where it is. The speed slide sound actually happens twice in this commercial, so I'll highlight the speed slide, copy it, and then paste it the second place it happens. Well, here they've edited this a little differently. They've actually cut off the Doppler point, the point where the raft crosses in front of the camera so they can get more of the tail, but we're going to cheat on it anyway. We're going to put the Doppler point right on that cut. But because we don't have any video before the Doppler point, I'm going to cut off some of the front so it doesn't overlap the previous scene that much. Well, now that we've got most of the effects for the water rides in place, it would be a good idea, if we haven't done it already, to hit Command S to save the session. It's never a bad time to save. And you'll get this message the first time you saved, hey, there are some files outside your session. You want to copy them into your session folder? And the answer is always yeah. So let's do that. So now that we have all the water rides in place, it's time to start laying in some of the non-water rides. We're going to go back and start at the beginning, since it's always best to work left to right. And I'm going to label track 6 as go-karts. And go-karts happen 3 times in this commercial. I'm going to go to the files panel and I'm going to type in go-kart and look for go-kart sounds, but it looks like I have nothing. And in fact, in all the sound libraries, I have no sounds for a go-kart.
Oh, what is that noise?
Oh, that is a lawnmower, or possibly a go-kart with a lawnmower engine. It's a motorcycle! It's a motorcycle! Son of a...
But again, what does a go-kart sound like? It sounds like a lawnmower engine, right? So I'm going to type in lawn, and there it is. I've got a lawnmower running, which should work just fine. So I'll drag that file, and I'll lay it onto the go-kart track right where the go-kart starts. We'll stop it where the go-kart stops, and then do that again for the next 2 go-karts. For the last go-kart, which is the last effect, we'll extend that past the end of the shot and fade it. We've used all 6 tracks, but we can always do Option A and create a new audio track. I'm going to label this arcade, and there are several arcade sound effects in this commercial, but they're far enough apart that we can put them all on the same track. And as always, it's best to work left to right so you don't paste over anything. Well, we need the sound of this guy playing pool, but if I type in pool, the only thing I see is wave pool. So again, just like with the go-kart, what does pool sound like? It sounds like billiards. I type in billiards and I have some choices, so I'm going to paste one of those in. On this scene, there are 2 spots in the picture I need to be concerned with. Once when he strikes the cue ball and the other when the pack breaks. Because the sound I'm using is not the actual production sound of him doing that, I'm going to have to adjust those 2 sounds to make them match the video. And once I do that, I probably want to bring up the volume just slightly on the cue strike since it's pretty low compared to the pack break. I can do that by adjusting the clip gain in the Properties panel or simply moving the yellow volume line up. Well, next, we want to add the sound for the batting cage. And the biggest mistake that most students make here is that they put the sound actually on the initial cut to the scene as opposed to right here where the ball hits the bat. I've given you a couple different bat sounds. There's an actual baseball hit with a wooden bat, which probably will work really well. Or if you want to be more realistic, you can do the anvil sound, which is like the metal bat or aluminum bat on a ball. Either will work. Okay, next we want to add the sound of hands, kind of a high five. I do have a sound called hands. Make sure when you lay it in that you cue it up to the actual sound because the sound doesn't start at the left side of the file. But you think, why are we doing this? It's kind of a silly little sound, but sometimes doing things like this really make you feel you're there. They call it breaking the pane, P-A-N-E. You feel like you're in the scene. Sometimes for ADR, for example, the actor may not be speaking. It'll be a close-up of the actor, and I'll just record the actor breathing. You can hear the actor breathing. You feel like you're in there with the actor. Well, the next sound we want to deal with is air hockey, and I do have an air hockey sound. I type in air, and there it is. In fact, I have 2 of them, but they're the same. I'll lay it in, and on that sound, there are actually several different air hockey hits, like double hits, like bam. I'm going to go to the second set because they're a little quicker, and I'm going to time the first one where he hits it, then I'm going to trim off after the second hit so it doesn't keep going on, and that should work just fine for that. Next, I have another arcade sound, and this is another one where people make the mistake of trying to put the sound right on the cut to the scene as opposed to where the ball lands in the alley. I don't have a skee ball sound, but what skee ball sound like? It sounds like bowling, so I have a bowling sound. I'm going to lay that in. I'm going to start it where the ball hits the alley, and you can see where that is because you can actually follow the yellow streak of the skee ball being thrown and match the sound to where it lands in the alley. And then we'll chop it off right about where the scene ends, which is where the wave pool starts up again. And this one we can go ahead and cut off. One sound that we could have added to the water was a scream by this woman on the speed slide, and I'm going to put it on the splashes track. You have to be careful with screams. You don't want to make it sound like she's getting murdered or killed. It should be a scream of joy, not a scream of pain. And one way to do that, again, is just to pull down the volume and do a fade, and hopefully it'll work just fine. We do see her mouth open, so a scream would be appropriate. Okay, now we're going to try to fill in the sound of the rides. And rather than trying to find metal squeaks that maybe sound like these actual rides, it'd be better to focus on the kids. They're having fun, they're laughing. That's the real plus here. So I'm going to create a track called Kids. I can use Option A to make a new audio track and label it Kids. Then I'll go to the browser in the Files panel, type in Kids. I have a bunch of choices. I can use the speaker icon there. When it's blue, I can actually audition the sound files by clicking on each file and hearing what they sound like. I'll pick one that I like, and I'll drag it onto the timeline. And again, this sound may not actually start at the left edge of the file, so I have to find where the file starts at. I have no time for dead air. We have to hear kids when we see them. And it's also okay to extend and fade the kids a little bit into the next shot. Speaking of the next shot, in the carnival vernacular, this ride is called a wave swinger. We want to use a different sound, so I'm going to pick Kids Outdoor 1 for this one. We never want to use the same sound for the kids more than one time in the commercial. The next ride, which is a Ferris wheel, we'll use Kids Outdoor 2. And again, all these sounds, make sure you have sound at the beginning of the file. There's no dead air, and you can fade it at the end if you want. Next, we have the golf scenes. We have actually 3 scenes where they're playing golf throughout the commercial. The first one is the big scene. We have 5 people teeing off simultaneously. The rule of 3 states that when you have 3 similar simultaneous events, the listener can't connect the sounds to more than 3 of the events on screen. So we can do the 5 people with only 3 sounds. Also, a golf swing is another sound where the placement is not the left edge or leading edge of the file, but it's where they actually strike the ball. So it's somewhere in the middle of the file. I'm going to search for golf sounds by typing the word golf into the Files panel browser, and it turns out I do have 3 sounds, which is all I actually need. I'm going to create 3 new tracks by hitting Option A 3 times and then label them Golf A, Golf B, and Golf C. I'll solo the golf tracks and then press M to add a marker at the point where the golfers hit the balls. The marker will be helpful when orienting the Doppler points of all 3 golf swings to that spot. If I want to, I can name that marker Golf in the Markers panel. Now, I'll drag each of the golf swings onto its own track. If instead, when you're dragging the files from the Files panel, they all end up on the same track, then hit the Option key, and the files will each go onto their individual tracks. Next, we want to locate the Doppler point on each one of the 3 golf swings. The Doppler point is usually where the file is the loudest volume, so you can look for the highest amplitude. It's also where the sound changes pitch. So we'll solo each one of these golf swings one at a time to find that point. Once we've found the Doppler point for each one of those 3 files, we want to orient them to the marker so that they sit right across the marker like that. However, when we play this, it really sounds like one humongo golf swing because they're so much in sync. Instead, we want the sound of multiple golfers, so we're going to offset those. We do that by going to the Properties panel. We can click on each one of the files and then click on the start time, change the start time by a frame. On the top one, maybe make it a frame later, leave the middle one unchanged. The bottom one, make it a frame earlier. So now we've kind of spread them out a little bit, and it sounds more like what we want to hear, meaning the sound of multiple golfers teeing off. And again, any listener hearing that would think they were hearing all 5 golfers, even though we're only hearing 3 sounds because of the rule of 3. The other 2 golf scenes have single golfers, so I'm going to hit Command-C on golf swing number 2. I'll locate where the ball is struck, put a marker for that, and press Command-V. Next, I'll adjust the position of the sound file so the Doppler point sits right over the marker. I'll go back to the 3 golfers. I'll highlight golf swing number 4, hit Command-C. Then I'll go out and I'll find where the last golf swing is, and I'll paste it with Command-V. Notice you don't actually see the golf ball being struck, but you can tell by the position of his hands that's where it is, so you can adjust it to the marker point there. So now it looks like everything is pretty much laid in effect-wise. This would be a good time to hit Command-S to save everything. Now we'll make a bus for all the sound effects by clicking Option B and naming it FX for effects. It's always a good idea to do that since now you have one fader that controls the level of all the sound effects. So to route each sound effect track to the bus, go up to the top where you see the default output and change that from default stereo to FX, and do that for all of the tracks. We have quite a few tracks. There's some that you have to scroll over to see. But once we've done that, then all of the sound effects will be routed through the FX bus. The only thing left is the music. It's actually a jingle, so you don't need to edit anything. It's cut to length. I type in Night in the browser, and I get the 09 Nights 3017D. The significance of that is the 09 means it's the 9th cut in the jingle package. Jingle packages contain multiple mixes of the jingle with varying instrumental lengths to fit different lengths of announcer copy. The 30 means it's a 30-second versus a 60-second. The 17D is a jingle term. 17 is the amount of time that the announcer has, and D stands for donut. A donut jingle has singers singing at the front and the back with a hole in the middle for the announcer. That's why it's called a donut. It's kind of an archaic term, but it's still being used. Again, another mistake a lot of people make is they put the jingle at the beginning of the timeline. Instead, start the jingle right at 3 seconds, right where the spot starts. It should start with the commercial, not in the Academy Leader. You shouldn't have to do much or any mixing at all. Everything should be about the right level, not even any program limiting. If you do need to tweak anything, you can pretty much do it all with 2 faders since you've got all the effects on one and the music on the other.
Come on, it's where the action is. Come on, it's where the action is.
So you can see how the effects put you into the action. To export the audio and video together, do File, Export, Export with Adobe Media Encoder. And you should have the same version of Media Encoder as you do with Audition. For example, they should both be 2018, 2019, 2020. Media Encoder will name the output file the same name as your session. You should probably put it on the desktop so you can find it. The Media Encoder format should be H.264. That'll generate an MP4 file that's about the same quality as what you started with. All of the other Media Encoder parameters are fine. Click Submit Assignment. Browse your computer to find the file on your desktop, choose it, and then click Submit Assignment. Once you've done that, you're done. You do have unlimited upload attempts on the Canvas Dropbox, so if there are any issues, you can keep resubmitting. And by the way, be sure to check your email often. This project should be graded with a critique within 24 hours.